What happens when two bass road warriors spend quality time talking music and life with one of their peers? Bassist, educator, author David C. Gross and bassist and head honcho of KnowYourBassPlayer.com, Tom Semioli, trade dates with the legends of rock, jazz, funk, blues, folk, country, and more. Notes from an artist. Revealing conversations with the legends who've created the soundtrack of our lives. What happens? You're about to find out. It's another episode of Notes from an Artist.
We welcome our listener back tonight for a volume-enhanced episode of Notes from an Artist. According to the Department of Health, my name is Tom Semioli. I am your co-host, along with my fellow inpatient, David C. Gross. David, say hello to our listener.
Hey, Karen, how you doing? And I'm not really sure if I'm an inmate or an inpatient, so we figure that out later.
This evening, we are graced with the presence of Joe Lynn Turner. He is a renowned vocalist with such iconic hard rock collectives as Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow, Deep Purple, Yngwie Malmsteen, the Hughes Turner Project with Glenn Hughes, whom you know from Black Country Communion, Deep Purple, and Trapeze, among others. Dave, you're a big Glenn Hughes fan.
Oh, I love his voice, love his bass player, and I love the fact that he's using orange amplifiers because, you know, I'm a colorful kind of guy.
Joe Lynn Turner is also a prolific solo recording artist. His latest album is entitled Belly of the Beast, which we will discuss. That came out in 2022. But there's much more to Joe than hard rock. He was a successful jingle singer, which for you young folks out there are people who vocalize on television and radio commercials. It's a very lucrative endeavor. David, you did jingles when you were a session player.
Exactly. I love doing jingles because you go to the union office, you pick up a stack of checks. However, as with the Michael Franks song, I hear from my ex on the back of my checks.
For a divorced listener out there, Joe also did session work as a backing vocalist. He's an extremely versatile artist, which is why he has been in demand for 40 plus years. We discuss current issues in the music biz, which Mr. Turner affords insightful views on. And he's another one of our guests, David, who is all about the big M.
What a great speaker. What a great guy. As we say in the interview, can't wait to get him back in New York to bring him to Arturo's, get a nice pizza pie. And we were talking Italian food. So, Tom, al dente, Mujan? I mean, what? Calamari? Scungili? What do you say?
I've signed legislation that will outlaw Russia forever. We begin bombing in 5 minutes.
There is David mangling the Italian vernacular, which is on the show. So let's bring on Joe Turner, and then we'll talk about the Joe Lynn Turner playlist. Joe, welcome to the show.
All right. How are you, sir?
Good. How about you guys?
All right. Excellent. We can all speak to each other. Welcome to the show, Joe. How are you, sir?
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Really. I'm good. Thank you.
You're good. All right, David. We're on tape. So we're not on tape. What are we on, David? We're digitally.
We're on Memorex, aren't we?
Yeah. Tape sounds good.
I come from
tape. You and me both.
So do we. We're all around the same age. So
yeah, I guess so. It means we're pros.
we're analog guys. But David, let us introduce our audience member to Joe Lynn Turner. He is a singer. He's a composer. He's a recording and performing artist. He's a producer. He's a collaborator. He's a session vocalist who has worked with my friend Lloyd Landsman. You did jingle work with Lloyd, yes?
Wow, Lloyd, yeah.
We used to do jingles. What was it? Joey Levine.
Joey Levine. I was big time Susan Hamilton. I don't know if you remember her.
Sure. Do you remember Momorsky, Zimmerman, and Ham?
All this.
Yeah.
If we can, we'll get into that era because it's a good story.
All right, Tom, you can continue.
I can continue. Okay. Joe is a nice Italian-American boy from Hackensack, New York. Jersey, right, I'm sorry.
Jersey.
Well, let's get this out of the way. Start asking the question. Sauce?
Gravy.
Yeah.
Okay. Joe, is it macaroni or pasta?
It's pasta.
Oh, okay. Al dente or moussade?
I'd say al dente. Moussade. You know moussade, right?
Moussade. Okay. And how do you pronounce calamari?
Calamari.
Calamari.
My parents had accents, two differing accents, one from Positano and one from like Sicily. So it was like they would say calamari.
Yeah, well, we Jews, it's Caeli Mary and Scungili.
Well, look, my best friend to this day who was big record executives and managed me, and he's still my financial guy, Mark Wexler. We had brisket and spaghetti every Sunday because I would go to his house and eat brisket. Then I'd go to my house, we'd eat pasta, and it was just continuous. So, I mean, I even went to Hebrew school with him, which is crazy.
Wow.
Baruch ator omnipotentu,
But Tom and I, we have a bass player summit, because we're both bass players, at Arturo's virtually every Wednesday night.
Right on Houston Street. You're welcome to join us. I guess
that's
from
great.
Hackensack, you must have been the Yankees and the Giants, right?
That's absolutely right. I was Yankees.
Tell you, this game, unbelievable that we're getting it in. It's rained all night, all day, right up to game time. Did it rain all night? Yes. I was out cruising the streets of Boston. Up that disco. You pajamas.
I'm a nice Italian boy, mama's boy from Long Island. It was all about the Mets and the Jets.
Yeah, of course.
So,
of course. Long Island. Yeah. Okay.
Hey.
I had many friends from Long Island. Kidding?
Right.
Please. It's a huge community. The whole Jersey, New York, Long Island. It's crazy.
Peter Barron says hi.
Just email Peter. Unbelievable. What a wonderful guy. Wonderful guy. Great guitar player, singer.
Right.
You guys know? What do you guys know? Everybody in the city that probably, right?
Yep.
Johnny Rosh and all those cats. Okay.
As a matter of fact, we did a benefit for Alzheimer's on Cape Cod, and it was Johnny, Jerry Murata, another nice good Jewish boy, John Altman, who actually wrote some of the music for the Titanic. He plays saxophone.
British.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I did a lot of session work too, especially jingles. Will Lee and everybody. I'm Steve Gadd. You name it. The New York cats. They used to fly me to L.A., fly me to Chicago. To do these jingles. But if we're talking about jingles, man, because Michael Bolton got me into the jingles. Great story.
Let's talk about jingles.
All right, let's go. Jingles been very, very good to me. We had a big party. It was a big party going on at the China Club one night. And it was all VIPs, and we're talking Mick Jones from Foreigner and Bruce Willis, Bon Jovi, everybody was there. So Michael comes up to me and goes like, "Hey Joe, you got to meet this chick." And I said, "Well, I meet a chick. That's what I need in my life is another chick." He says, "No, you don't understand. She's the queen of jingles, Susan Hamilton." So I says, "Jingles, Michael, what the hell? I don't know how to do. What am I just come off a tour of Rainbow and all this stuff?" He says, No, you don't understand." He goes, "There's money there." So I said, all right. So I met her, and the next night we had a Miller Lite commercial. So I was one of the Joe Sarasano, all these cats,
Remember Johnny?
They were all there. Johnny. So anyway, here's the new kid, right? The new kid in town, the rocker. And I come in to do it. Willie, everybody's there, and they cut the track. 30 seconds, then 15. So they cut the track and everybody had to take their shot at the vocals, and I won. That's what you call winning the jingle. Yeah. And that was it, boy. That started a lot of friendships and a lot of hatred.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Yeah, that kind of a situation. Well, I'll tell you a great story. So I'm doing a jingle for what was the Jewelers Guild of America. And before I go further, do you know why you guys make more than I do when doing a jingle? Do you know the real reason behind it?
Well, I know what they say, but what's the real reason?
Well, the real reason is essentially back in the 40s and 50s, there were orchestras for each studio. Consequently, if you were doing a Lux commercial for WOR or NBC, the singers would have to go there. Then next they have to go to another studio, so they got more money for traveling.
Traveling?
Yeah.
Really? Because
traveling.
I was told it's because we're like on-screen personalities, kind of on-screen, but just below on-screen. Because I did a Domino's where I was on-screen and sang the jingle, phenomenal, actually with Dee Snider's kid on bass. I was playing the guitar. It was all fake, but we were dressed up like over-the-top rock stars.
Yeah.
And that's what they told me. They said, well, if you're on screen, it's this level. If you're a voice, it's this level. And if you're a musician, it's this level. So
it's that level. But what happened was Jewelers Guild of America. I did this 30-second and a 60. And it's, and this beautiful jewelry says, I love you. I go to the union office, right? And I'm picking up a stack of checks. Because the Jewelers Guild was, and it's Sales jewelry, and it's your mama's jewelry, and it's your papa's jewelry. Ah,
Fabulous. It's fabulous, right? I can't begin. I saw Michael. Of course, I worked on Michael's records and stuff like that. But there was an interim where I hadn't seen him. And then I saw him at the Grove in LA years later, varied kind of show. And I just said, Mike, I never got to thank you for the jingles. And he went, oh, that's okay. Because I said, I bought 2 houses on that. It's like
exactly. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Unbelievable, crazy money. But back then, now it's a lot of buy because I have my agent she still sends me, emails and stuff. And I could do things here at the home studio, but I don't even try anymore because it's really like, $150 buyout for like 6 years. It's like, get the hell out,
Yeah, you spend way too much time.
I got a hell of a reel, guys. Good story. I did Folgers and we did Feels Like the First Time. Foreigner. Mick Jones was producing the track and he got me, of course, instead of Lou Gramm because of their differences, what have you. And I did my best Lou Gramm imitation. And the band actually thought it was them. That's how close we came.
Wow.
Because I was in Foreigner for I was actually in Foreigner for 2 weeks during the Say You Will period, because Lou and Mick had differences of opinion, probably over the writing or something. I went up and auditioned and got the job, except that Bud Prager and I had a big falling out. I don't know if you remember a guy, Bud Prager.
Oh, I remember him really well. I was Ian McDonald's brother-in-law. Yeah, I know all about that crap.
Al Greenwood was in my band, co-wrote a lot of stuff with me on the Rescue album. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think Bobby Massano went out with Lou Gramm on the solo thing.
And Bobby Massano played on my record. And
right, Bobby and I were in Robin Beck's band.
There you go. Robin, yeah. Sure. A good story about Robin, too. But anyway, Massano played bass on the record because, it was horrible. We were supposed to get Michael Anthony, actually, from Van Halen. But something screwed up at the last minute. And Bobby said, look, I'll chip in and play bass. I could play the bass. The parts weren't that difficult. You know what I mean? It's
not a difficult instrument. Yeah.
Well, it depends on who it is.
Right. 4 strings, 12 notes, David.
What do you mean 4 strings?
Well, yeah. Well, this was teenage 8-note stuff, a lot of it, okay. So it's not a problem. But yeah, man, you guys know all the guys I know. What a coincidence. That's great.
Small world. I follow you on the Spotify, and I also follow Ja Wobble, and I was shocked the other day. Up comes a song called Moonchild, which is an interpretation of the King Crimson song from Court of the Crimson King. You're part of a tribute record, but man, I thought it was a great idea to put Joe Lynn together with Marty Freeman and Chester Thompson and the amazing Ja Wobble. How did that happen?
Well, I do a lot of stuff for Cleopatra, a lot of one-offs. Started years ago, actually. It's a lot of fun, and you get to play with a lot of people, and it's variations of popular songs, or mostly popular songs. And that was one of my favorite King Crimson songs. We tried to do a cover of it, my cover band Ezra and all this stuff. But when John Lappin gave me the offer, I just went, gotta do it. I don't know what I could do to that song because the melody is so precise and so beautiful, really. So all I did was blues it up a little bit on the second verse, and then Marty and those guys did the rest. But it's always fun doing those covers.
When you think about, the Rolling Stones, the Who, this, that, and the other thing being together so long, but King Crimson, isn't it amazing? They're still going.
Yeah.
In one form.
Fripp is still out there. I mean, what Progressive is back in. You wait long enough, I suppose, and he's like the king guitar player of Progressive. So, I mean, he does stuff with his wife, I believe.
They have a very, very funny YouTube channel, and I highly recommend you catch the King Crimson documentary. We had Toby Ames, who directed it, and we've also had Tony Levin on the show and Trey Gunn. Crimson's legacy continues. You were a prog rock fan in your youth, yes?
Me, yeah. Mm-hmm. Are you kidding? We did. Who else was like besides Genesis? Was considered prog anyway. Flash, being Children of the Universe. Yes, was big. Yeah, I mean that was prog.
Was it Peter Banks from Yes? Right?
Yes, that's right. Peter Banks. Sure, Peter Banks. Yeah, we did all those kind of covers and originals like them, even like Black Sabbath and all that, that kind of stuff. I mean, we were kids in a garage, trying to do what we could, So I'm originally a guitar player.
Right. You took lessons from Leslie West. How was that? Tell us about.
Absolutely, Leslie Weinstein.
Yeah.
lived up the hill from me. When my parents moved, I was still pretty young. We moved over to the other side of town, the better side of town, because they both worked 2 jobs and trying to give us a better life. And Leslie lived up on the Summit Avenue on the big with the big homes. The doctor, his father was a doctor. I ran into him, I think, supermarket or something. And I was a big fan of Mountain. Still am. I love Mountain. And I just said, and this was even in the early days when he was the Vagrants, I think.
Yeah,
so I just said, you play guitar? He goes, yeah, you play guitar. So I said, yeah. He says, come over to my house. No problem. I'll show you a few things. And he gave me, Leslie could talk, but he gave you philosophy. It's in your hands. The notes are in your hands. He goes, these people, they've tried this guitar, that guitar, it's here. It's in your hands. It's in your soul. It's in your body. For me, Leslie taught me how to do the harmonic fat part of the thumb. And he told me really mostly how to compose a lead, because he could stretch 3 notes out of 1 string, on the same fret, and just miraculous things. Theme for an Imaginary Western. That lead is just the epitome of Leslie West. What he did was less. Now everybody's shredding and all this, and it's lost its dignity, in my opinion. It's really lost a lot of that charm when you actually felt the composition of a solo. I think Marty Friedman just came out with an article about that. He said all those leads should go. All that type of stuff should go. He says, I want melody and I want feeling and composition, of course, that builds up, goes someplace. And that's where Leslie was at. And after that, I mean, we met each other again in a project called Voices of Classic Rock, where a lot of different singers, Mickey Thomas, Jimmy Jameson, Edgar Winter, a whole bunch of people would all get together with a core band, and we'd go around playing huge corporate shows. I mean, they'd fly us out to the islands and everywhere, it was good money. And we had a blast. And Leslie was part of that for a long time. And we spent a lot of time together traveling and just telling. He's a funny guy. His jokes are ridiculous, I mean, he's got more Jewish jokes than anybody I know. Unbelievable. So and then I got a great story though. So we had a great friendship. So one night I'm living in Jersey. This is after the Rainbow Days and all. I get a phone call from him. He goes, "Hey, Joe." I said, "Yo, Les, what's going on?" He goes, "I need you." I go, "When? You need me for what?" He goes, "I'm in the studio." I go, "Great. Okay. You doing another record?" Yeah, dude. I says, "All right. Can you make it?" And I says, "Well, I get my schedule book out, right? Like a professional." And I go, "Okay, what day is good for you?" And he goes, "Now." Now. I go, "My wife is cooking dinner." It's like, now? He goes, "Can you be here in a half hour?" I go, "If I left immediately, you're out in you're out like east, like Jersey. I got to drive. It's going to take me at least 45 minutes. All right, get here as soon as you could." So he does the record. And we're at a party. And I go, "Les, you never gave me a CD. You never gave me a CD. He goes, "All right, come with me." Goes in the trunk of his car. goes into the player and pulls a CD out with no cover. My name's not anywhere, It's like, here. I was like, "Thanks a lot." And I have it to this day.
But I didn't charge you for it.
No, I'm like, yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Yeah, I got to spend a day with Leslie. I had to do a cover story on him. So I was there when he was on the Howard Stern show for the first time. So that was quite an experience. But your parents were very supportive of you. Your dad said, if you're going to build a house, you need a hammer. And he encouraged Duddy.
My mom was the one who was, you gotta go to school. You're gonna fall back on something. And I arrogantly told her, if I fall, I'll fall on my face. And she just looked at me like, yeah, like, and wait till you see what I do. But my father was very supportive. My father was a singer in the USO shows in the military, and he was a staff sergeant. But at the same time, he had a very velvet voice. He would sing with Sinatra, Tony Bennett, Vic Damone, all those guys, because they would come and do the USO shows. And he was the local guy in uniform, that would sing. So he loved me, and there was music throughout my house constantly, especially the Italian singers and all Caruso and all of them. We had everybody. A lot of R&B, Ray Charles, you name it. So that's pretty much where I got my background. And my whole family was musical. Every Sunday, they'd break out the jug of wine, the big one. And oh yeah. And the big, huge family pasta, and my grandmother would have a washboard and spoons. My grandfather would play concertina, because at 7 years old, they bought me a mini Galenti, and I had to play accordion.
Oh, you have to play an Italian family. You got to play accordion.
Oh God! But it's such an unsexy instrument. Really not cool.
But at 7, you can get away with it, though. You know what I mean? It's when you start getting into junior high, 12, 13. That's what I mean. Where's the monkey? Where's the monkey?
Yeah, really. I was like getting into girls, and I've got, I'm playing long ago, and I'm like, I can't do this. Elvis is out with a guitar, the Beatles, and my father brought home a guitar, a real cheap K. That had telephone wires for strings, it was like 2 inches off the fretboard, that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's how you make your chops, Joe.
Well, let me tell you, making a D chord was pretty tough. And he brought home a booklet of "Please Please Me, I Want to Hold Your Hand, and She Loves You" or something. And I just dug in, and that's how I started playing guitar. So very musical family. Yeah. In fact, my Uncle Pasquale, he would get drunk. He was an alcoholic. So he would get drunk, and he would lay on the bed with the guitar on his big belly. And he would say, "It's in the rhythm, Joey. It's in the rhythm." And I would play the rhythm while he moved the chords around till he passed out. True story. Hand to God.
What a story. And you also studied with Martin Lawrence, I think, was one of your vocal coaches. You were always, trying to improve, trying to keep your chops up.
The vocal coach. Because I went to my father said the hammer thing, you got to build a house. So you should get lessons for guitar, lessons for accordion, lessons. You got to get some lessons. Although I'm an ear guy, I was always an ear person. But I could read, but not well. I don't practice it. So I was looking for a voice teacher, and I went to a couple, Thomas Rexdale and a whole bunch of other people who were like, with the tongue and all of this. And it just did not resonate with me. It just didn't do it. And finally, when I hit upon Marty Lawrence, God bless him, he just showed me that sort of bel canto thing, whatever they call it, with the diaphragm, no air in your lungs, support, the pyramid, mentally, everything. And because I have a very low voice, but at the same time in rock, you had to start singing C's and D's at least, that kind of stuff. And he got me to achieve that. In fact, Bon Jovi was looking for a teacher, and I turned him on to Marty and a couple of other people because Marty was, in my opinion, he got results. He used to warm up Whitney Houston, Pavarotti when they came to town. Now his son, right? Yeah. Don is doing it. Yeah. Same place, I think, 72nd and 72nd and West End or something.
Did your dad live to see your success?
He did. Thank God. He really did, because great story at the Garden. That's when you feel like you've arrived, guys. I mean, I played bigger places and things like that, but when we played the Garden, Scorpions were opening. That's where I went to see a lot of, besides the Fillmore and the Capitol Theater and Passaic and things like that. The Garden was where you went to see the big bands. Even if you had to sit up in the nosebleed section, it didn't matter. You got a ticket, you were there. And playing the Garden was like you have arrived. You're playing New York. You're playing your hometown kind of thing.
World's most famous arena.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's still celebrated. It's a prestigious place to play. And my whole family was there, of course, and friends and you name it. It was sold out. It was great. And my dad comes walking backstage with a couple of blondes on his arm. And my mother's behind him rolling her eyes, going, he's in his second childhood. And my dad was going, yeah, I know Joe Lynn Turner. That's right. I can introduce you to Joe Lynn. I'll get you a T-shirt. God love him.
And then he introduces you to Joey Liquido, right?
He did. That's right. That's how I got my name, Joey Lynn. When we were up at RCA, the Recording Cemetery of America, we were at RCA in Fandango. My friend who's passed now, Ricky Blakemore, figure that synchronicity out. Ricky Blakemore, okay. We were up there and he goes, you got a spaghetti bender name. He was from Manassas, Virginia. Richard Mason Blakemore. God love you, Rick. And he said, you got a spaghetti bender name. He said, when we go down south and play shows, he goes, they're going to tar and feather your ass. So I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, look, you like the blues? I said, yeah. He goes, Big Joe Turner. He says, you're Joe Lynn Guido. You could be Joe Lynn Turner. So I was like, come on, man, like this. And we got up to the offices of RCA. They were going around handshaking and saying, well, what's your name? And he blurted out, that's Joe Lynn Turner. And they went, wow, that's a great name. And I looked at him and he looked at me and I went, okay, I'll play. And I guess to quote Steely Dan, that's all the pros changed their name.
You think about RCA, and you were in Fandango. I was in Aztec Two-Step at the same time. Another destruction on RCA. And you know what the one band that fucked us both up was? Pure Prairie, because they had that Amy. So all the other folk rocky kind of bands got screwed. And RCA still didn't know what to do.
Yep, I remember Aztec, man, sure. But I remember everybody up at RCA, man. If Elvis, they would dig him up again if they could over at RCA.
Exactly.
They made their money. They made their money on Elvis's catalog. It was an evergreen.
Big time. Man, I remember all those
I guess Jefferson Airplane, they did fairly well.
Well, they did better as the Starship. The Starship, they did much better commercially.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. This
and I think the most famous band, Starland Vocal.
Oh, man. You remember these guys. You're killing me with this. Starland Vocal Band. Starland Vocal Band. Wow.
Well, to bring us back into the 21st century,
Why?
A year and a half ago, you did Belly of the Beast, which is a very, very heavy record, hard-edge concept record. And I guess it's a reflection of where you are now, pretty much, creatively, spiritually. You speak truth to power on that record. It's about a concept record about waking up. We've lost our way. We've lost our spirituality.
Yeah, it's very personal. It's very socio-political, geopolitical. It's more a mature record for me, I think. Everybody knows me as the balladeer and, love songs and this and that. But I have a lot of different voices. And I really wanted to use a different voice and a different approach. And I purposely didn't do any real solo albums for like 5 to 6 years. Solo albums. I did projects, one-offs and things like that, but solo albums, no. And I wanted to wait because I had met Peter Tatgren. I played for his brother's party. His brother's a big fan. And I was hanging out with him and Sabaton and a couple of those guys. And Peter said, why don't we do a record? Okay. So on the way back to the train to get down to Stockholm, he's up in Sweden, he gave me, I think it was a cassette back then. And I wrote to this particular track, which later became Don't Fear the Dark, Belly of the Beast. And we kept in touch, but at the same time, there wasn't any windows of opportunity. So finally, I got up to Sweden, at the studio, The Abyss, and we wrote 2 songs, and it was magic. It was chemistry. We wrote Black Sun, very political, and we wrote Tortured Soul, which is, again, a pretty heavy song. And then the pandemic happened. So we started to do everything virtually at that point, between files and WhatsApp and Viber and what have you, and computers. But it worked out because I had a small little 4-track here, or actually it's a 6-track would bounce on if I bounced. And I just did the vocals that way. And then finally went into a studio and actually redid the vocals after we got the songwriting together. Beast is definitely a message record. And I think at some point I shall be redeemed because, there's a lot of people who just don't want to talk about stuff like this. It's starting to open up now. I'm starting to see a lot more awakened people. They really are. And I think
awakened, not woke.
Yeah. Oh, not woke at all. Awakened, awake. Meaning like, what the truth is, an intrinsic truth. I think I had an edge on that in many ways, only because of my own upbringing and life experience. So I was kind of lucky that way. Unlucky, lucky, perfect mistake, call it what you will. But I saw this coming 5 years in advance. I saw what was going to happen. And now, look, I love America. I think America is the greatest country in the world, but right now it's in trouble. And
you get to see it differently because you're living outside the United States now. And of course, you travel extensively. You tour in Europe, you toured in Iraq, and you see clearly how we suffer from tunnel vision over here. And the United States looks very different when you leave and experience other cultures, has been myself and my own travels. And I worked in television news for many years. I know how the sausage is made. I worked in the factory, but obviously, so you can see things a lot more clearer, let's say.
Yeah. you got a 30,000 foot view, you can really overlook propaganda. It's everywhere, really. But then there's a truth in between all that. And you can, like you said, you can see where the sausage is made. You know what ingredients are going into that. So you can actually say, well, I'll eat it or I won't, and digest that. If I grew up in the 60s, 70s, and it was all about the man against the machine, and all that.
What has been the feedback? I love Black Sun. That's my favorite track on the album. It's got a Deep Purple vibe to it. And I think so. But what's the feedback? You're not singing about girls and having a good time.
Well, first of all, I got amazing. I hate to say it because it sounds like I'm patting myself on the back, but the reviews were amazing. I mean, I got an 11 out of 10. I mean, classic rock, especially the guys in England, they're hard-nosed and they loved it. I mean, I did very well with that. And I did very well, especially with my fan base, but they love everything I do. But really, I gained a lot of new fans and probably lost a few fans from it because they just live in denial. But at the same time, I think I changed the image, first of all, with the hair, took that off and the whole bit, right? Yeah, brother, I know. So there was a whole turnaround, and people ask me, well, what made you do that? Was it the album? I said, no, not at all. Actually, it was, when stuff comes together like an apex and it just all comes together naturally and organically, that's actually what happened. Because my wife's going, look, man, you look more badass without that stupid hair on, and you look this and I said, you're right. I don't have anything to prove anymore. I was never trying to hide. It was an open secret, It wasn't like, and look, everybody's wearing hair. All these guys are still wearing hair. Guys who criticized me are now patting baldness and they're wearing hair.
Well, let me tell you a funny story. I grew up in the hair replacement business. My mother owned my mother owned one of the more popular hair replacement, not wig, hair replacement in Rockville Center.
Taylor Topper.
And I worked there. I used to make the hair weaves when I was a kid. And that's how I
made one too few, huh, Tom?
Right, I know. I earned my allowance and I would go to Sam Goody and buy Led Zeppelin albums. Interesting story, Joe. Both our plight. I went to some of the hair replacement conferences and spoke to the people in the industry conferences in LA, Austin, and Chicago, and said, look, we got to come out of the closet. It's okay to wear hair. Yeah. It's like the eyeglass industry had this big campaign, Frame a Great Face, if you remember in the 90s. And they had George Clooney and Roger Daltrey with eyeglasses on because you couldn't wear eyeglasses, right? They were for nerds. You wore contact. And people make no secrets about their breast implants or Botox. So I tried to convince them that you should wear hair like an accessory. That's all it is, a fashion accessory. And it's funny, my mom had a shop in Rockville Center. We did a lot of theatrical people, a lot of rock and roll people, and nobody would go in the front waiting room. We had to put in the back entrance, we had a mirror like the porn shops used to have, so you can look out the door, right? Not that David would know anything about that, but yes, so you didn't see people coming. But yes, I grew up in that industry. My mom worked with Charlie Alfieri, who did Everybody on Broadway and the rock stars.
Yeah, and Paul Huntley.
Yes, you thought you were going to talk about music.
Yes, and so Joe, you and I have something in common. We both wore my mom's hair, so probably. So there
I'll
you go.
Guarantee you we did, man. And I mean, we're talking about. I was always getting the Italian. I wanted the Italian hair.
Yeah, that was the best hair. Yeah,
it's the best.
About that.
Yeah, it's because of the pasta, David, and the oil and the skin, the grease balls. You grease
and the
balls
Caeli Mary, right?
And the Galamad and the Schwilladels.
That's right. That's phenomenal, man. Because I, as a little kid, I'll give you a quick story. I was born, no problem, with a big fat head of Italian hair. And at 3 years old, my mom's washing my hair in the tub, and it all started to fall out. And the actual problem was an autoimmune disease, which was caused by vaccinations. They give too many vaccinations to a child before the blood-brain barrier is formed. And that's all I'll say about it.
Right.
Okay. And it's horrible, but that's how I lost it. But it was fun. I mean, I thought it was fun. It was an accessory for me. It's like you put on your rock and roll clothes and you put on your hair.
You put on a tuxedo when you go to a formal, what's the big deal? Yeah, I tried talking them into it. Right, alopecia. My mom used to make wigs for kids. that
That's right.
had alopecia, and she would donate them. She would do all that.
Oh, what a great mom.
I want to ask you, and this is a legitimate question. Musicians work hard to develop their own identity, but there are times when we got to step in and adapt to a situation. Now, you had in your career 2 very daunting challenges when you began your association with Ritchie Blackmore. In Rainbow, you follow Ronnie James Dio and Graham Bonnet, 2 pretty decent singers, as I recall. And then, of course, you take the Deep Purple gig, and you're assuming the mantle of Ian Gillan, David Coverdale, and Rod Evans, all very strong personalities in their own right, who connected with respective audiences. Hey, that's tough for any musician to navigate. What was your approach in those situations when you got the call?
Well, I'll address the fact that I try to be identifiable. I am who I am. I feel like Popeye when I say that, but I am what I am. But
I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I am what I am, and that's all what I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man.
But I'm me. My voice is my voice, and I can try to emulate people. That's how I think we all learn. You guys probably emulated people on the bass, Jocko, who knows, right? But then you develop your own kind of style and who you are. Unless you're playing a session, you play for what's needed. Now, you're playing for what's needed, but at the same time, you're playing you. You're still you. It's still you in there. And you probably suggest a couple of other moves that they didn't even think of. And that's you. That's your identity. So I tried to keep my identity, is what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, tried to do a great job. And people said, well, you got big shoes to fill. And I arrogantly said, no, I'm going to make my own footprints because I can't be any of those guys. My credo in life, my father always taught me to be who you are. That's the important point of life. It's not riches. It's not fame. It's trying to spiritually and on this material plane to find out who you are. What are you here for? What's your purpose? What's your worth? What are you giving back? He told me, he says, look, you're my child, but you don't belong to me. He says, you belong to the world. And he says, so go out there and do this. Give them the music. Those words still echo in eternity for me. So I just went in and did my damn best. It's funny. People ask me if I got backlash from that. Are you kidding? That's all I get is backlash. But unlike the challenger who gets in the ring, who doesn't have the reach and probably doesn't have the height and maybe is less powerful, but I get in there and fight anyway. I'm kind of like the underdog all the time, and they always call me underrated. And that's probably true. I really do believe I'm underrated because I think people listen with their ears, but they don't really hear. And there's a lot of that goes on. Or maybe it's the opposite way. Maybe they hear, but don't listen.
Let me interrupt. There's a great line in George Martin's book, All You Need Is Ears, which came out in the 70s. And he said about the Beatles, as talented as they were, he goes, people listen to music with their eyes. When they saw the Beatles, and how gorgeous they looked and how exciting. You were there February 9, 1964. What happened, right?
You're right.
When they saw the Beatles, when they see you on stage, when they see you on a record cover, they decide right then and there whether they're going to give you a chance to like you. That's George Martin's words. So
that's right. Continue.
Yes, you're absolutely right. People don't listen to music with their ears. Musicians do, but not the civilians.
No, not the general fan base, and I don't mean to disrespect anybody, but not my fans anyway. But I'll tell you something that would. I had a girl who worked for me for years and years. She used to be a radio programmer, and she knew all the DJs and everything. And when my album Rescue You came out, all the girls went fluttering over it, and all the guys hated me. She told me, she said, all the guys hated you. They didn't want to play your record because of that. And that's about looks, because I was, it was kind of fancy pants back in those days, right? I always said to her, really, Lisa, is this true? She said, absolutely true. And I saw that provocation on them. If the guys aren't if you're not like a regular geezer, forget it. Let me put it this way. The hardest thing for me to learn was jealousy, because I'm not jealous. I'm envious. That's a big difference. I envy someone who's accomplished things. I envy someone who's got an importance and has done things in life, which makes me want to do something like that. But I'm not jealous of that. I'm not Salieri. I'm not that. I really am not. I'm still trying to find out who I am, what my creativity is about. And I'm too preoccupied with that probably to be jealous of anyone. I mean, there's a really great singer out there I'm proud to call a friend of mine, called Dino Jalusic right now. And he is just the shit, man. If you get a chance, listen to Jalusic. This guy can sing. And he's been singing since he's like 3 years old. He's also an amazing keyboardist and amazing composer. composer and writer from Croatia. I wrote a major review on the album and I posted it on my social media because I'm so impressed with this. And people were like, wow, you can actually give accolades to a guy who you think is. I said, look, I had my day. I did my day. I'm an inspiration to him. He told me so, face to my face. He said, you were my inspiration. He's mentioned me. I said, that's enough for me. What do I got to withhold whom I think is going to bring who's the next guy who's got the torch? And he's it. He just puts everybody to shame. And he's learned from all of the greats, whether it was Coverdale, Gilland, Tyler, me, whoever it was. He took everything and put himself into it. Why be jealous of that?
The way it should be.
Exactly. But that's why I wrote a song called Jealous Lover, although it was more in a romantic fashion. But there was a couple of lines in there in the verses that said, today you love me, tomorrow you might, it's like they're so fickle, people. And here I am on stage today, but something changes. And sometimes, they come up with, especially when you're on stage, you might have had this, guys. You're on stage and you're rocking away, and the girl's looking at you, and she's like into you, and the boyfriend's got his arms crossed and he's looking at you and he's looking at he wants to take your head off.
Well, that happened to David because David was a hard rocker with long hair. See, I was a dweeby indie rocker guy, so I had the short hair and the black T-shirts. I didn't have to worry about that stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you had your own side of it, but you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
Show business is nuts, so keep your identity. I think that was the main thing. I just tried to be me within the situation, but also do the job because I was hired to make Rainbow commercial. I was hired to make Deep Purple commercial, and everybody yelled at us for having a commercial record, but yet we sold a lot of records. It's crazy,
Yeah.
Speaking of changes, we're old enough to have seen all the new technology that's come around, right? From the electric bass in the 50s to the DX7 in the 80s. Now, I thought it was pretty cool when Ringo and Paul took a cassette demo and made a song out of it that sounded like George and John were in the room with them, Artificial Intelligence. And I guess John and George were there spiritually, certainly technically. What are your thoughts on AI, this new technology?
It's like a loaded gun. It could protect you or you could shoot yourself in the head with it. Double-edged sword. I think it's frightening to a degree because people actually want to become more robotic. I mean, the songs that they're writing with AI, come on, man. There goes songwriting. There goes your job. There goes your bass player. They'll just play a bass part for me. Look what can happen here. So, I mean, this whole transhumanism is frightening.
I think if you put good stuff in, you may get good stuff out, and then you may not. But you really have to be very discerning in its use. For instance, Tom and I, we've been doing this for about 3 years now. So we've got over 110 interviews. We're taking a bunch of our interviews and turning it into a book. You may be one of us.
Oh, absolutely. We got to have a Joe Lynn Turner chapter.
I certainly hope so. I'd be honored, really.
Excellent. But here's the thing. So Tom wrote out a press
proposal.
A proposal. And one of the differences between Tom and I is I'm silly. He researches. That's it's Martin and Lewis, Rowan and Martin. Okay. So what I did is I took his proposal, put it into AI, and said, rewrite as if you're Clive Davis.
Okay.
Now the thing is, the original content was fantastic. Tom's a great writer, but it's missing that silly David. So we're looking at it. Oh, we'll take A from column B. We'll take da-da-da. That is when you've got the computer phrase garbage in, garbage out. It's the reverse. Good stuff in, good stuff out. But you have to be discerning to know what it is. And for me, I started on the piano. I went to clarinet. Just like you, my sister took me to see A Hard Day's Night. I'm not getting laid with a clarinet.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Well, I understand the discernment, but I think Dr. Evil is going to be in there somewhere. The Dr. Evil types are going to be, they can be discerning, but I'm going to do this. I mean, it's CERN all over again. It's like, you got to give me a break with that. That's dangerous territory. So I'm not saying that it can't be used properly, but it's been my experience that anytime humanity or whatever, when humans get their hands on things, they fuck it up.
Yeah.
They really do. They just plain fuck it up. It always comes out like, let's invent the bomb.
Yeah, good, great. Yeah, see how that worked out. All right, let's talk about another thing. We had Myers on the show. He's a noted author, and he wrote a book called The History of the Rock Concert. And it starts off with Elvis Presley playing county fairs in Mississippi all the way up through Woodstock, Live Aid, Lollapalooza, Glastonbury. And it concludes with an Elvis Presley hologram concert. Now, Mark, who is our age, confessed that the Elvis hologram concert was a great experience. It offered a new perspective on Elvis. Joe Turner's been around like 40 years now. Well, if we enjoy him in 2024, what's to say we won't enjoy him in 21-24? What about a Joe Lynn Turner hologram show? Would you go to see that? Would you pay to see Joe Lynn Turner?
I was asked, well, I'll answer it in this way. I was asked to join the Dio Disciples and to have this Dio hologram. And I knew Ronnie from upstate New York, just like I knew Lou Grammatico, Lou Graham. He was in Black Sheep. Ronnie was in Elf. I was in Ezra. And you know, it's a small circuit, as you guys know. Sure. You know, playing up in the Joker and suffering 7 half-hour sets a night. Anyway, I had to turn it down because there's a phrase called rest in peace. And I don't know. I just don't think we need to dig it up. You know what I mean? Why? It's only, who's making that money? Is it going to a Dio charity? Is it going to an Elvis charity? Is there a
Who owns
reason?
the trademark? That's who's making the money. Whoever owns the trademark.
I mean, so the purpose is money, or is we're going to enjoy Elvis? You know, this is the same thing, guys. That I'm going to ask you this. It's like lip syncing. They're using tracks now. What the hell kind of a concert is that?
Yeah,
and
right.
What is that track? Do you get paid for that track? Do I get paid for that track? Of course not.
No, you know what I mean? But people go and they know the band is using tracks and they still go like it's great. Well, there's no musicianship in that. There's no talent in using tracks. I mean, push a button on a computer and play to the click. But other than that, what's the point? We're losing the whole art form of this. It's going away. It's slipping through our hands. It's no longer an art form. It's just becoming a, how shall I say? A
commodity.
Well, thank you. That's a really good word. A commodity.
A commodity.
And they pay exorbitant prices to see people using tracks, not to sing live or not to play live, but or these bands that there's not one original member in the band.
Trademark. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Jerry Shirley called me. It was still called Humble Pie.
Yeah, but somebody owns it.
No one from Humble Pie in Humble Pie. And my real connection to it was I was managed by Lieber Krebs, so I at least was in the same building as Steve Marriott, but that's about it.
Lieber Krebs, I know that. Look, again, how do you do that? Foreigner's now doing that because, you know, I mean, Kelly's a friend of mine, the Hanson, this lead singer, but I mean, it's not foreign, but they go for the songs. Okay, but you can play the songs from the real versions in your headphones or whatever, or blast it through. You go there and you act as if that's foreigner or something. I don't get it. That's like saying, here's a fake Michelangelo, and, you know, and you should worship that or something. I mean, I don't know what's going on, guys.
On hologram concerts, I will chime in with Lemmy's quote that death is God's way of telling you to slow down. So yeah, I agree with you on hologram.
I agree with Lemmy.
Now, David has a great saying that how do you make a musician complain, David? What's the key?
Give him a gig.
Talking about streaming. Now, when record companies rule the music business, as you recall, musicians complained about the gatekeepers. You had to look or sound a certain way to get signed. And in response to the major labels, the indie labels were created. And that's how we got the Talking Heads and the Ramones and Nirvana. Now, Joe Lynn Turner and David and Tom can go directly to the consumer. No compromises. You don't have to go to a gatekeeper. Good or bad? What do you think, the streaming world we live in?
I think I think it's partially true, but I think it's also on a turn now, you know, Tom, because what I see coming out of a lot of these quote unquote indie labels, besides bands like, well, there's some really cool indie bands. I mean, look, you're talking to a guy who used to go down to CBGB's and Cafe Wah and see all of, you know, I hung out with Johnny Rotten, okay, drunk on Fifth Avenue. We got kicked out of 2 clubs. So, you know, Johnny Rotten. And you're talking to a guy from that era. You know, but now I notice that a lot of these bands, rock bands, are coming out trying to look the same, trying to sound the same, wearing the same uniform with the chain on the jeans and the long hair and the flips and the shredding, and everybody's starting to be the same. So I think it's getting convoluted again into a same society. Not to say there aren't outstanding bands that are still indie, and that's great. I think it gives everybody an opportunity. But I think I just read where Spotify or a couple of these streaming, they deleted like 5 million artists, what they call artists. They said, these are not artists. And they did it by the amount of streams or views that they had. There's everybody posting stuff, but nobody's getting played. And they just eliminated it, saying, we can't do this anymore. I wish I was more educated on that. I skimmed the article, but it basically said there's too much shit out there. That's just shit. That is not really artistic. And then they had a way of gauging the artistic value of the artist. And it immediately hit me and it made sense. And I said, you're absolutely right, because every mother's son is putting something out. Anybody's got a computer. So in a way, again, it's the double-edged sword. It's good. But me and you, we had to go in a garage. We had to practice. We had to have no money. We starved in a studio apartment in the Lower East Side. At least that was me. I had to go with my guitar on my back looking for gigs till you had to be
showcase with a record company to even be thought of getting a label.
Absolutely. You had to work your ass off in order for anybody to notice you. Yeah. And now that's not the case. So, hey, isn't that grand that anybody could put up a stream? But isn't it like, in a way, now it's kind of turning a corner where people are losing the fact that you got to work hard for this shit, man. You got to sacrifice. You got to dedicate. Musicians have always, it's funny. We're always applauded and loved and put on a pedestal, but we're the ones that were always underpaid and underlaid. I mean, in history, we were shit,
Yeah.
We were lowlifes. We were drunkards, drug addicts, I guess we still are in a way, but yeah. But you know what I'm trying to say here? It's like now it's overkill.
Well, it is overkill, but again, one of the good things is can go directly to a consumer. You don't have to go to the gatekeeper. But as Roger Daltrey and many others have said in their autobiographies, they really didn't make money from the record companies. I'm sure, the publishers made money and the songwriters, but they really made money at the box office. And to me, streaming is just level the playing field in that if you want to make a living as a musician, you better go out on stage and kick ass, or else
that's it.
You got to deliver. You have to deliver.
Yeah. My only point was that it's so saturated now that you can't even get to the indie people who mean something because it's just much of same old. It's like, whoa.
Speaking of indie people, how'd you hook up with Steve Carras?
That's a strange one. Yeah. That's really strange. I think he had written an email to me about there's an author up in Vancouver. Her name is Jay Lang. She goes by Jay Lang. And she's written 13, 14 novels. She's pretty celebrated in her own way. And she was going to use me as a character or something in the book. And she wanted permission. And she wrote to Steve, wait, this is after the fact. Steve contacted me over something it was accidental. Okay, guys, accidental. And we started to have a long conversation. And I started to get inside Steve's spirit and mind, and I kind of liked the guy. I really liked the guy. He was honest. He seemed sincere. And I said, well, I'm in need. My wife's been managing me. She's an international lawyer. She's great at it. We've made wonderful success with her, but she's got a baby now and she's got to do other things. So I said, so I need another half. She still co-manages in many ways. So I need somebody to do this. Can you help me out with a deal? He said, well, I know the guys from Mascot and so on and so forth. And that's how we hooked up. That's it.
We go back to when he was working for IRS. It's got to be 40 years ago.
Yeah. And then I found out that he worked here, there, and everywhere in big PR and all this stuff. And now he's hooked up with Toto and Lukather and everybody. And he's a sincere, honest guy. And you don't find a lot of those people in this industry. So
that's true.
And so is Mascot, by the way. Ed Zill from Mascot is he's a beauty, boy. I love him. He's amazing. He just told me to go make the fucking record I want to make. He doesn't care what. Yeah, he did just like that on a phone call.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
He said, you don't have to make the same record over again. In fact, an artist should never make the same record over again. I said, you're right. You're really right. I went, somebody gets it. Like, wow.
Well, one more question, Joe. What's on your bucket list? What do you got to do? What do you have to do, Joe?
Well, my new project, of course, is my son. My new son. I've already got 2 grandsons by my daughter, which is a strange situation because now my son is their uncle. But that's life, guys.
Works out at Christmas time.
So I'm really into because when I had my daughter, I was always on the road making a living and for them, and a very good living, I might add. And I would come home and she'd go, "Are you my daddy?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, that's me." She didn't know who I was. And now I can spend time with this new. I want to make a productive, creative human being here. I want to do something like that. I want to give him the guidance that I couldn't even afford her. But at the same time, time. Yeah, I've got records to make and I've got things, but on a bucket list, I don't know. I did a lot of things in my life, and I'm just thinking, what else could I do? Who would I work with, and all of this other stuff? And I'm really at a place where I'm very peaceful and content in many ways. And I think I've matured into a person, thank God, that I'm still alive to say it, that I can actually appreciate now life itself. So I guess it's to still be creative. I might even start writing. That's the thing, because I heard from Jay Lang's publishers, I wrote both forwards to these new books, and they asked if this guy writes, and you would appreciate that, you guys. And I started to think maybe I should do a side hustle or something and write. I still haven't written my own autobiography yet, so I'm kind of lazy like that. Yeah, but it's hard for me to do that. It's hard. Yeah. It's like there was a sunny day on August 2nd, 1951, I have Julie on my social media staff. She's a writer and a photog, and she's great at it. She has all the chronology. It's all set up. She knows my life minute by minute. I have no idea. The older you get, you start to lose the years,
Well, if I have a suggestion, start your book like that. Go through maybe one page, then put like a circle with the X through it. And now this is what really happened. That's the way to go.
Anyway,
something like that, maybe.
Yeah, maybe you could do. You could do a verbal history. That's worked out. I think Dick Wagner did that. That was very good. Keith Richards, I think life was a more dialogue. It wasn't a chronicle.
Oh no, he sat at a typewriter to do that one time.
Yes, he did that. Bob Dylan's Chronicles was very good. It was just random recollections and things. It wasn't a linear.
That's kind of cool. Random recollections.
There you go.
I don't want to show where the bodies are buried. It's not my thing. What I want to do is basically say to some kid, if I could do it, you could do it.
Well, that's you don't have the same thing here. David and I, believe it or not, we're disciples of Dick Cavett and David Susskind. We don't give a crap about scandal and gossip. Who needs that shit? It's about music. We can talk to Ron Carter. We can talk to Joe Lynn Turner. We could talk to Glenn Matlock of the Sex Pistols. And we're going to talk to your buddy John Wobble, my favorite bass player. So, yeah, man.
Yeah.
He needs all that other stuff.
Wait a second. I thought I was your favorite bass. Oh,
you are, David. You are. But those two extra strings, they're very complicated. Anyway, Joe, can we get a PSA out of you? Oh, here he goes.
Absolutely. So let's see how this goes. Hey, everybody. This is Joe Lynn Turner, and you're listening to Notes from an Artist. Keep it locked and keep it rocked.
Excellent.
Wow, we got a tagline out of that.
I've done it once before. I did it once before. You know what I'm saying over there?
Hey,
forget about it.
So listen, when you're in New York, you come with us to Arturo's. You order anything you want on the menu.
Scungily.
No.
Let me tell you, I'm taking you up on that. My wife just came back. She just came back from New York, New Jersey area. She had to do some business, but I'm due. And when I'm there, I'm calling your asses and we're going out.
Oh yeah, we'll give Peter Barron a call. Have him come over from the island.
Perfecto, boy.
We'll stick him with the check.
I'll leave you with this one. With my friend, Jews and Italians. He says, "Hey, without Jews and Gypsies, there wouldn't be any show business."
Amen.
Well, what about guilt, David? Talk about Italian and Jewish guilt.
Well, Italian guilt, you get it now. We have to wait. So we've always got that over our head that, it's going to be coming. And, the whole thing about reincarnation, I am convinced when St. Peter sees me, he'll go, you're not going back. Come in, but you're not going back.
You can stay here, okay? You're much better. You can stay over here. That's it.
You grab a broom.
They don't need you down there. That's right. We have to wait for guilt.
Mingya. I taught him how to say Mingya. Anyway,
guys, it's been a real hoot. I got to tell you, edit what you got to edit. I understand that perfectly. But you know what? It's really good to talk to people like you. Honestly, God bless you both. Really.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy.
All right, man. We'll be in touch and we'll send you, when the links and all that other stuff.
All right.
All right. Be well, sir. Talk to you again.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
And we thank Joe Lynn Turner for being our guest on Notes from an Artist. David, you have curated a Joe Lynn Turner playlist. Let's talk about what you have for us.
Well, we've got things going back right from the beginning. We have an early recording when he was on RCA with a group called Fandango. We have some Rainbow tunes, some Uwe Malmsteen, some Deep Purple, Mother's Army, Raisin About, the Hughes Turner Project, which you were talking about in the intro, Sunstorm, Rated X, and 4 tunes from Joe Lynn Turner solo albums. So we got a pretty decent set list. Hope you all enjoy it.
All right. Thanks for another great episode of Notes from an Artist. My name is Tom Semioli, and you, sir?
I'm David C. Gross, and we can't wait to see you next week because we have another fantastic artist planned. We have an author, great book called...
It's so great, David forgot the title. Is it Trish Romano?
Yeah, it's Trish Romano.
Right, it's about the Village Voice. And we're also going to have James Kaplan on to talk about his book, 3 Shades of Blue. But right now, I need to get David to an emergency room and make sure his wires are reconnected. So on behalf of David, who has just collapsed, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.